Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm GOVT and these are the headlines. Iran says the US has agreed to remove all sanctions on Tehran's oil and shipping sectors at Vienna talks to revive the 2015 nuclear deal. Presidential Chief of Staff Mahmoud Faizi says Washington has also agreed to take some senior Iranian figures off a blacklist. Meanwhile, Tehran says it has foiled a sabotage attempt against a building of the Iranian Atomic Energy Organization. In occupied Kashmir, Indian troops martyred a Kashmiri during a military raid in the Shopian district. On Monday, 3 Kashmiris were gunned down in a similar raid in Baramulla district. In Pakistan, at least 3 people have been killed and 21 wounded after a blast in a residential area of the eastern city of Lahore. Authorities are ascertaining the nature of the explosion. An airstrike has killed dozens of people in Ethiopia's Tigray region, where fighting has escalated between the government troops and rebels in recent days. Several others, including a 2-year-old child, is being treated at a hospital in Mekelle. A spokesman for the military did not confirm nor deny the incident, but said airstrikes are a common military tactic and the force does not target civilians. Pakistan has received another batch of 2 million doses of the SINOVAC COVID-19 vaccine from China. The country has reported 39 deaths and 930 infections in the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, Brazil has registered over 2,100 deaths from COVID-19 and nearly 88,000 infections overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.8 million lives and infected over 179 million people so far. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. The US has called for an end to violence in Afghanistan, blaming the Taliban for much of the bloodshed. Talking to reporters, a State Department spokesperson Ned Price urged all sides to engage in serious negotiations for a political settlement. He termed peace talks between the Kabul government and the Taliban the only way to end 40 years of war. Meanwhile, the Taliban have claimed to capture 4 more districts in Paktia, Ghazni and Badakhshan provinces. A Taliban spokesperson said they have arrested 150 Afghan soldiers and seized several vehicles and ammunition. In Kandahar, Afghan police said 5 civilians were killed and 20 more wounded last night in a roadside blast. So far, no group has claimed the responsibility for the attack. US Senator Lindsey Graham has warned that ignoring Pakistan while withdrawing from Afghanistan could lead to a disaster. In a series of tweets, Graham said Washington cannot pull out effectively without coordinating with Islamabad. He cautioned that ignoring Pakistan on the issue will be a major disaster, worse than the blunder in Iraq. The Republicans criticized the Biden administration for believing that America's problems in Afghanistan have ended. Graham added Biden's reluctance to reach out to Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan is stunning. Iran has called for an immediate de-escalation of tensions in Afghanistan. In a tweet, a foreign ministry spokesperson said Iran is closely watching the worrying developments in Kabul. Saeed Khatibzadeh added that Iran favors a comprehensive Afghan dialogue. He stressed that the destructive US policies have left long-term consequences in the region. Khatibzadeh blamed Washington's irresponsible conduct for the worsening situation. Iran says the U.S. has agreed to remove all sanctions on Tehran's oil and shipping sectors at Vienna talks to revive the 2015 nuclear deal. Presidential Chief of Staff Mahmoud Waizi says Washington has also agreed to take some senior Iranian figures off a blacklist. He said more than 1,000 sanctions will be lifted under the agreement. Earlier, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani also said the main issues in the Vienna talks have been settled. However, Germany's Foreign Minister Heiko Maas said talks have been making progress, but still major hurdles remain to overcome. The talks adjourned 2 days after a hardliner, Ibrahim Raisi, won presidential elections in Iran. Iran says it has foiled a sabotage attempt against a building of the Iranian Atomic Energy Organization. Iranian state media said the assault caused no loss of life or property damage. It said the tight security precautions adopted following similar acts on Iranian nuclear sites and scientists guarded against any damage. Investigators are working to identify the perpetrators and determine the facts surrounding the incident. In occupied Kashmir, Indian troops martyred a Kashmiri during a military raid in Shopian district. On Monday, 3 Kashmiris were gunned down in a similar raid in Baramulla district. Fake encounters and extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris have become a new norm in the region after India revoked its autonomy in August 2019. More than 300 Kashmiris have been martyred since then. The Russian Defense Ministry says its warship has fired warning shots at a British destroyer after it entered the Russian waters in the Black Sea. The ministry said the shots were fired after the UK warship ignored a notice against intrusion in Russian waters near Crimea. It said a Russian jet also dropped bombs in its path to force it to change course. Russia annexed Crimean Peninsula in 2014, a move that wasn't recognized by most countries in the world. Russia has frequently chafed at NATO warships' visits to the Black Sea, casting them as destabilizing. China has condemned a U.S. warship's latest transit of Taiwan Strait, calling Washington the region's greatest security risk creator. The U.S. Navy has been conducting such operations in the sensitive waterway on a regular basis now. The People's Liberation Army said it monitored the U.S. vessel throughout its passage and warned it. It added the U.S. is playing the same old tricks and disrupting peace in the strait. Meanwhile, the U.S. Navy said the guided missile destroyer USS Curtis Wilbur conducted a routine transit. The Navy reiterated that a transit demonstrates U.S. commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. The United States says it will continue to seek dialogue with North Korea over its nuclear program. This comes a day after North Korean leader's sister Kim Jo-young rejected an early resumption of talks. State Department spokesperson Ned Price said Pyongyang's remarks have not changed the U.S. view on diplomacy. Price said a calibrated, practical and open approach is needed for the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. He reiterated Washington's offer to meet anywhere, anytime without preconditions. The spokesperson said the U.S. continues to hope that North Korea will respond positively to its outreach. Illegal Israeli settlers have stormed East Jerusalem's Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. They have threatened to forcefully expel 3 Palestinian families from their homes within 1 month. Israeli parliamentarian, police and the head of an extremist Jewish settlement organization also accompanied the settlers. In the Blue City, the Israeli army handed demolition orders targeting 20 Palestinian homes as well as a mosque. Israeli police also forced a Palestinian to demolish his 3-story building in the town of Al-Isawiya in occupied Jerusalem. Earlier, dozens of Israeli settlers forced their way into the Al-Aqsa Mosque complex. A recent study has found that over 30,000 U.S. troops have committed suicide since 2001. The study by Brown University shows the number is 4 times higher than those killed in actual combat. In its report, researcher Thomas Ben-Soot said just above 7,000 troops were killed in post-9/11 war operations. The report reads the increasing rates of suicide in military personnel are outpacing those of the general population. The study cites trauma, stress, military's masculine culture, access to guns, and public indifference as major causes. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has backed removing the prosecution of sexual assault from the military's chain of command. A Pentagon report estimated over 20,000 male and female service members experienced sexual assault in 2018. Dozens of people have reportedly been killed or injured after Ethiopia's Air Force bombed a busy market in the northern region of Tigray. Eyewitnesses say the Ethiopian Air Force struck the town of Togoga, 25 kilometers from the region's capital, Mekele. Doctors at the hospital in Mekele said they are treating dozens of people, including a 2-year-old child left injured by the airstrike. Medics said the Ethiopian military stopped them from reaching the site of the attack to help the wounded. A spokesman for the military did not confirm nor deny the incident, but said airstrikes are a common military tactic and the force does not target civilians. This comes a day after residents said new fighting had flared in recent days north of the regional capital, Mekele. Brazil has reported over 2,100 deaths from COVID-19 and nearly 88,000 infections overnight. Globally, the virus has claimed more than 3.8 million lives and infected over 179 million people so far. More in this report.
As vaccine shortages driven by global financial disparity continue to mar the fight against the pandemic, the Delta variant of COVID-19 threatens to erase all gains. A dramatic rise in infections has gripped Russia, which reported the highest number of daily deaths since early February. America's top immunologist, Anthony Fauci, has termed the Delta variant as the greatest threat to U.S. efforts to eliminate the virus. The White House says the United States will likely fail to meet President Joe Biden's goal to deliver at least one vaccine to 70% of adults by the 4th of July.
Well, we don't see it exactly like something went wrong. How we see it is we set a bold, ambitious goal, something the president has done from the very beginning. And we are expected to meet that goal just a couple weeks after July 4th. And in fact, at this point, as of today, we're going to be already at that point for people who are 30 years of age and older.
The World Health Organization says it is concerned about the easing of restrictions by nations hosting the Euro 2020 matches. The global health watchdog noted that some states are already seeing rising cases. Meanwhile, New Zealand has raised alert levels in its capital, Wellington, one level short of a lockdown, over the possible presence of the dangerous Delta variant.
We just held a special cabinet meeting, and out of an abundance of caution, the Wellington region will move to alert level 2 from 6 p.m. tonight, and that will run through at this point until 11:59 p.m. on Sunday.
In India, authorities have declared a new coronavirus variant to be of a variant of concern and said nearly 24 cases were detected in 3 states. Meanwhile, Brazilian federal prosecutors have opened a probe into a contract worth $320 million for 20 million doses of a vaccine made by an Indian firm. Moreover, China reportedly plans to keep border restrictions in place for at least another year amid fears over the emergence of new variants.
Pakistan has received another batch of 2 million doses of the SINOVAC COVID-19 vaccine from China. In a statement, the top health authority, NCOC, said the consignment is part of the planned contracted quantity purchased from China. The statement added the new shipment will considerably enhance the daily average vaccination process. So far, over 13.8 million vaccines have been administered across the country. The health ministry said the country's death toll has topped 22,000 with 39 more deaths overnight. It's 930 people tested positive for the virus in the past 24 hours, taking the caseload beyond 950,000. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan visited the ISI headquarters, where he chaired a meeting of the recently established National Intelligence Coordination Committee. According to the Prime Minister's office, a comprehensive briefing followed by a discussion on enhanced intelligence cooperation was held. It said the Prime Minister expressed satisfaction over the performance of the National Intelligence Coordination Committee. The meeting was attended by some cabinet members and the heads of the civilian and the military intelligence agencies. In Pakistan, at least 3 people have died in a blast in the eastern city of Lahore. Police say 21 others were injured after the explosion hit a residential area in Johar town. Lahore's Deputy Commissioner said the injured also included a police officer. He said it was not immediately clear what had caused the blast. The Counter-Terrorism Department has taken over the investigations. Meanwhile, Punjab's Chief Minister Usman Buzdar has directed the Inspector General Police to probe the incident. It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. Welcome back. A large number of Hindu community members held a protest in Islamabad demanding justice for the 11 Pakistani Hindus killed last year in Jodhpur, India. The protest was called by the All Pakistan Hindu Panchayat. Members of the Hindu community held demonstrations before the Indian High Commission condemning the mysterious killings. The protesters said the Indian government still has not handed over the bodies of the slain Hindus. On August the 9th last year, 11 Pakistani Hindus were killed by Hindutva extremists in a village of district Jodhpur in Rajasthan state. Catalan separatist leaders have vowed to continue their struggle as they walk out of jail a day after the Spanish government pardoned them. The 9 leaders were jailed for their failed independence bid in 2017. The released politicians and activists were greeted by the pro-independence head of the Catalan regional government amid cheers and clapping from supporters. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has said the decision is a step forward towards resolving a political conflict, but his opponents have accused him of using the pardons to gain political mileage. Germany has called on the foreign fighters to leave Libya to ensure a peaceful political transition in the war-torn country. German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas made these remarks ahead of the Berlin conference on Libya today. He expressed hopes that the conference will boost the interim government and empower the Libyan people. In a press briefing, Maas said the planned elections in Libya for December 24 this year must go ahead. UN representatives and foreign ministers from the US, Russia, China, Turkey and Egypt will take part in the Berlin talks. Meanwhile, Libya's Presidential Council denounced Rome's invitation to Libyan foreign minister to hold a reconciliation forum in Italy. It condemned the Italian move for not consulting the council and demanded the cancellation of the forum. Russia has reiterated unconditional support for Syria's sovereignty, unity and territorial integrity. Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Yuri Borisov made the remarks in a meeting with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus. Borisov reassured that Russia is ready to provide further comprehensive assistance to Syria. Meanwhile, Syrian media said al-Assad stressed the importance of continuing coordination with Russia. The meeting came just hours after the newly inducted British aircraft carrier claimed striking ISIS targets in Syria. In a statement, London said with new stealth jets, it is ready to deliver the hard punch of power against the enemy. Sudan has asked the UN Security Council to meet and discuss a dispute over a dam being built by Ethiopia on the Blue Nile. Sudan's Foreign Minister Maryam Sadiq al-Mahdi asked this in a letter to the Council's head. She urged the Council to immediately discuss the dam's impact on the security of millions of people. Sadiq al-Mahdi called on the Council head to urge Addis Ababa to stop the unilateral filling of the dam. Ethiopia is pinning its hopes of economic development and power generation on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. However, the two downstream countries, Egypt and Sudan, seek a binding agreement on the filling and the operation of the dam. The UK and Cambodia have vowed to further strengthen and expand their relations and cooperation for mutual benefits. The two sides gave the statement after British Foreign Minister Dominic Raab arrived in Cambodia's capital, Phnom Penh. Raab is the first British Foreign Minister to visit Cambodia since the UK reopened embassy there 30 years ago. British Foreign Secretary held talks with his counterpart, Prak Sokhonn, over trade, economic ties and Myanmar. Cambodia is set to take over the chairmanship of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations next year. In a tweet, Raab said London looks forward to working together more closely during Cambodia's ASEAN chairmanship. Iran has denounced a UN Human Rights Council report on Tehran's violations as propaganda. Iran's permanent envoy in Geneva, Ismail Baghai Khamenei, addressed a session of the Council. He says some biased states have for long instrumentalized human rights as part of their agenda against Iran. Khamenei said Iran is fully committed to the protection and the promotion of human rights and respects its international obligations. He called on the world to uphold the principles of non-selectivity and eliminate double standards. Earlier, UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet expressed concern over the widespread use of the death penalty in Iran. China has called on world countries to promote closer international cooperation on human rights. Chinese envoy to the UN office at Geneva, Shen Shu, delivered a joint speech at the 47th UN Human Rights Session. He spoke on behalf of nearly 20 countries, including Russia, Belarus, Venezuela, Iran, and Egypt. Chen highlighted the West's hypocrisy in interfering in other countries' internal affairs under the pretext of human rights. He called on the Human Rights Council to carry out its work in accordance with the UN General Assembly resolutions. The envoy stressed the need to adhere to the principles of multilateralism and upholding international justice. The U.S. administration says it will investigate the dark history of Indian boarding schools. This comes after 215 indigenous children were found in a mass grave at a boarding school in Canada. Speaking at the National Congress of American Indians, Interior Secretary Deb Haaland said the government will work to find the remains of children who died in the schools. Haaland acknowledged that U.S. agencies try to eradicate indigenous culture, language, spiritual practices, and people. She said the Interior Department is positioned to carry out the probe as it oversaw the schools.
Hello, everyone. I'm coming to you all from today. I'm announcing and sharing with you all, first, that the department will launch the Federal Indian Boarding School Initiative. At no time in history have the records or documentation of this policy been compiled or analyzed to determine the full scope of its reaches and effects. We must uncover the truth about the loss of human life and the lasting consequences of these schools.
China's President Xi Jinping has spoken to the in-space crew of the Shenzhou 12-manned spaceship. It is the first manned mission to Beijing's under-construction space station. Speaking at the Beijing Aerospace Control Center, President Xi extended greetings to the astronauts on behalf of the entire country. The president said the construction of China's space station is a milestone in Beijing's space cause. He said it will make pioneering contributions to the peaceful use of outer space by humankind.
You three are representatives of the numerous drivers and climbers serving China's space cause in the new era. I hope you will keep up the good work through close cooperation and successfully fulfill the remaining tasks. I wish everything is going well with your work and life in space, and we wait for your victorious return in Beijing.
A panel of international lawyers has unveiled a historic new definition of ecocide after 6 months of deliberation. If adopted, it would put environmental degradation on par with war crimes and could be prosecuted by the International Criminal Court. The draft law outlines ecocide as unlawful or wanton acts committed with knowledge, that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and either widespread or long-term damage to the environment. Its authors want the International Criminal Court to endorse it and hold big polluters to account. The Stop ECOCIDE Foundation initiative comes amid concerns that not enough is being done to tackle the climate crisis. A mummy of an Egyptian man underwent a CT scan at a hospital in Milan as part of a research project. The remains of the mummy are believed to belong to an ancient Egyptian priest called N.KOREA. More in this report.
Ancient Egypt met modern medical technology when a mummy underwent a CT scan at a Milan hospital. The project, A Mummy to be Saved, aims to shed light on the light of the mummified man and the ancient Egyptian burial customs.
It's a sort of virtual autopsy. We can do a sort of fly-through inside the mummy. So we can study the mummy, we can reconstruct the life and the death of this person. We can also be sure about the sex because we can study the pelvis and we can measure him so we can understand how high he was.
Medical staff also carried out chemical and physical analysis to understand the type of products were used to mummify the body. The mummy and its sarcophagus has been in Bergamo since 1885 and were donated by an Italian ambassador who was living in Egypt.
We are not sure exactly if this mummy is really the priest, because in the past, with the antiquity market, was quite frequent to associate a mummy to another coffin.
Researchers say the analysis will also allow them to study ancient diseases and could help modern-day medical research.
Another business update. Most European stocks have edged lower as investors take a back seat over possible impacts of rising cases of COVID-19's Delta variant. Frankfurt's DAX is leading the losses, dipping over 0.5%. Italy's FTSE MIB, the Pan-European Stock 600, and the CAC 40 in Paris also edged down marginally. London's FTSE, however, has ticked up fractionally. Earlier Asian stocks traded mixed, with Australia's ASX 200 shedding and Japan's Nikkei 225 trading flat, while others gained. And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.